Hey everyone, welcome back to TechBit Academy. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel.
Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever stopped to actually think about how you do the things you do? And I don't just mean the big, complex projects at work. I'm talking about the completely mundane, everyday actions you take for granted. Well, today, we are looking at a concept called Hierarchical Task Analysis, or HTA for short. It is an incredibly powerful lens for zooming in on, understanding, and organizing everyday processes. Because HTA is quite literally all about organizing information and structuring workflows, we're going to meta-demonstrate that by showing you the exact structure of this explainer right up front. We'll hit 1, breaking down the everyday, 2, the language of tasks, 3, the 5 core steps, 4, stages of an HTA, and 5, putting it into practice. All right, let's jump straight into section 1, breaking down the everyday. I want to challenge you for a second to really think about the underlying complexity of the absolute simplest things you do. For example, how hard is it to brush your teeth? It feels completely automatic, doesn't it? You stumble into the bathroom, have a sleep, and it just kind of happens. But even the most basic routines have incredibly formal, structured components if you actually take the time to map them out. Now, what's really interesting here is how a seemingly intuitive morning routine actually involves 8 distinct steps and multiple specific tools. Just think about the flow. Grabbing the toothbrush, grabbing the toothpaste, opening it, applying it, brushing, spitting, rinsing, and finally putting everything away. And then consider the physical items required: a toothbrush, toothpaste, water, a glass, maybe some floss, and a clean towel. Suddenly, brushing your teeth isn't just one single action anymore. It's a multi-step, resource-dependent project. Moving right along to section 2, the language of tasks. To analyze workflows properly, we need to transition to formal terminology. This acts as our analytical zoom lens. At the absolute highest level, we have tasks. A task is defined as a discrete unit of work performed by an individual. It has a very clear beginning and a very clear ending. So going back to our previous example, the entire job of cleaning your teeth from the exact moment you walk into the bathroom to the moment you leave, that is your task. Now, when we zoom in slightly, we find subtasks. A subtask is the smallest step into which a work activity can be divided. Think of these as the necessary individual building blocks that make up the main task. Grabbing the toothbrush, rinsing your mouth, yep, those are your subtasks. And if we crank that zoom lens all the way into maximum magnification, we hit elements. An element is literally a step within a step. We're talking about the absolute atomic time motion levels of a subtask. For instance, the specific physical wrist rotation you use to unscrew the toothpaste cap. Now, you rarely go this deep unless you're conducting a highly technical ergonomics study, but it's there. So how do we unpack all these tasks? Well, in HTA, there are 2 primary ways you can unpack a task, which is a process called decomposition. You can go incredibly deep into one single step, mapping out all of its subtasks and elements before ever moving to step 2. That's called depth first. Or you can map out all the top-level steps first just to get the entire wide view, which is breadth first. The cool thing is, the system allows you to alternate between the 2 depending on exactly what it is you're analyzing. Which brings us to section 3, the 5 core steps. Task analysis isn't just some random mental exercise. It is a highly structured methodology. Here are the 5 foundational steps of task analysis. 1. Identify the jobs or tasks to be analyzed. 2. Clarify the desired results. 3. Prepare a plan to do the analysis, which involves implementing and analyzing results. 4. Break down the task into its component parts. And 5. Restructure the parts if necessary. Step 5 is really where the magic happens, guys. That is where you actually achieve learning or skill outcomes. You literally break things down just so you can build them back up better. Okay, on to section 4, stages of an HTA. Let's look at the specific 3-stage life cycle of creating these diagrams. We kick things off with the starting stage. First, you specify your main task. Then, a fantastic rule of thumb is to break that main task down into 4 to 8 subtasks. You want to stay right in that sweet spot, so the whole area of interest is covered without missing anything, but without totally overwhelming your initial diagram. Finally, you draw these out as layered plans that are logically and technically correct. And this brilliantly illustrates a key feature of HTA. HTA doesn't just list a sequence of sterile steps in a vacuum, it actually describes under what conditions those subtasks are performed. You might be completely focused on the subtask of vacuuming the couch, but you absolutely must account for environmental conditions, like, say, dealing with an unexpectedly aggressive feline who is definitely not a fan of the vacuum nozzle. Moving on to the progressing stage, this is where you have to make some executive decisions. You must actively decide your level of detail and exactly when to stop zooming in, so your decomposition remains consistent across all your tasks. As we mentioned earlier, you can alternate between depth or breadth first here, and vitally, this is where you label and strictly number the HTA so everything tracks logically. Finally, we reach the finalizing stage. You check that your decomposition and your numbering are perfectly consistent, and perhaps you produce a written account to accompany your diagrams. But the absolute most crucial step here is the last one, getting a second person to look it over. They should understand the tasks involved, but they cannot have been involved in your analysis. They are your blind spot check. Let's bring it all home with Section 5, putting it into practice. Let's take all this theory, the terminology, the stages we just talked about, and apply it directly to a familiar household chore. We establish our ultimate task, task 0, clean the house. Now, to even begin this task, there's required background knowledge. The person doing the cleaning must know about vacuums, their various attachments, dust bags, where the cupboards actually are, and the general layout of the rooms. Let's start detailing those textual HTA steps. Step 1 is get the vacuum cleaner out. Step 2 is fix the appropriate attachment. We are breaking down the initiation phase right here. Notice how real humans, sometimes very young, enthusiastic ones, perform these physical actions. That means the interface between the human and the machine is a vital part of the analysis. So, the crucial point is what happens next. Step 3 is clean the rooms. But clean the rooms is way too broad, so it fractures into its own specific sub-hierarchy based on the different rooms in the house. We get Step 3.1, clean the hall, Step 3.2, clean the living rooms, and Step 3.3, clean the bedrooms. See how the numbering keeps everything perfectly nested? Continuing our build, we arrive at Step 4, empty the dust bag. This is a specific, necessary action that requires completely stopping the cleaning process to manage the equipment. But as we're going to see in just a second, it is not a step you just do blindly in sequence. And this brings us to plans. Plans dictate the actual execution flow. Our master plan, Plan 0, says do Step 1, 2, 3, and 5 in that order. But look closely at Step 4. When the dust bag gets full, do 4. Step 4 is entirely conditional. It is based entirely on feedback from the environment. You don't just empty a completely clean bag because it happens to be Step 4. You wait for the condition to be met. And we see this flexibility again in Plan 3, which governs the rooms. Plan 3 dictates do any of 3.1, 3.2, or 3.3 in any order depending on need. It allows for complete flexibility based on what actually needs cleaning at that moment. This really emphasizes that these analyses aren't just rigid, robotic codes. They are practical frameworks meant to organize fluid, real human life. Which brings us to the end of our explainer. But before we go, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. What other simple daily routines are actually incredibly complex when you put them under the HTA microscope? The next time you make coffee or even just drive to work, try applying this structural lens to your world. Think about your tasks, your subtasks, and your conditional plans. Who knows? You might just discover a much better way to operate. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer. See you next time.